help us to open our eyes and our hearts and our minds to look at the possibilities that are before us. As we listen to those who are giving reports, may we be attentive to the hard work that has been done. As we listen to the financial reports, may we be attentive to the challenges that are ahead, but also to the graciousness and the immensity of your love that knows no power, that continues to move us onward. As a church, gracious God, bless us. For each of us who are gathered here are trying to be your people, trying to share your love, and trying to do the best for the church and for the community. All these things we pray in the name of Jesus the Christ. Amen. Okay, so we have an excellent slide presentation that has been, PowerPoint presentation that has been put together by the clerks, and so we will look at that. Unfortunately, for those of you who are online, you won't have that in front of you, but we will make that known what's going on each time, so that everybody is on the same page. So the first is a motion moved by Catherine Hurdle, seconded by Sue Shane, to appoint the Reverend Marty Mollengrath as convener, Margie Warren, Gary Grant, and Terry Whiffen as secretaries. Are we ready, clerks? Are we ready for that motion? So moved, as is outlined there. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Wonderful. Next slide, please. Motion authorizing this meeting as a regular congregational meeting, and again within the Presbyterian Church in Canada, a congregational meeting is called by the session. It actually is a session meeting to which the congregation is invited. And this motion is to say that we have done everything that is necessary. It needs to be announced at least 2 Sundays previous, and so we have done that. So this authorizes it. Motion moved by Margie Warren, seconded by Gary Grant, that this congregational meeting held with members and adherents attending in person or joining by video conference and telephone be authorized as a regular congregational meeting for making decisions. So moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? And carried. All we have to do is the same thing for the next 20 motions and we're okay. I wish. Next motion. Next slide, please. Okay, motion with respect to the minutes of the 167th annual meeting on February the 28th. And you will find those in your outline that was handed to you, your packet that was handed to you. They are on pages 4 to 10. The motion is moved by Terry Whiffen and seconded by Carol Alguire to adopt as printed the minutes of the 167th congregational meeting on February 27th, 2022. So that's moved and seconded. Any discussion on this motion? Any questions about the minutes? Do they effectively reflect our conversation a year ago? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? Opposed? And carried. Wonderful. Next slide, please. We're now heading into a variety of different meeting reports. And so we'll go through all of them. I think there are 5 through 11, I believe. Some of them will have an opportunity to hear more verbal reports. Some of them are just as printed. I'll go through each one, and if there are any questions, we'll give an opportunity for questions, and then we'll go on to the next one. So at the end of all of this is when we'll make a motion to adopt them. I think there's a motion a little later on that will adopt 5 through 11, but that is after we've heard all of the reports as necessary. And as I say, some of them will have an in-person kind of reporting as well. So the first one is the notes that I gave from as lead minister on page 10. Any questions about any of those? Okay, let's move on then to page 12 from the Pastoral Care Coordinator, Reverend Wendy. That's on page 12. Any questions? Wendy, I don't think that Wendy will want to say any more. No, Wendy, you're like me. You've said enough, right? I've said lots, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay, any questions for Wendy? Okay, let's move on to the next one, the Kirk session. Margie, excellent report from Margie. Margie, is there anything more that you wanted to say in addition to what you said?
No, I'll do my thanks at the end.
You'll do your thanks at the end. Wonderful. That's great. Any questions about the report from the Kirk session? Okay, thank you. Let's go on then to the Board of Trustees. So now Bob Fuster is not here. He's still in hospital. Bob wanted me to say that he was sorry that he could not be here, that he misses all of you. And then in Bob's incredible fashion, he said, well, tell them I miss most of them. And then he laughed, right? So I told him that I would say that, okay? So, but no, Bob does wish that he could be here. He is here in spirit. I convinced him not to watch these proceedings because he needs to focus on his own health. There are a number of announcements, of motions through this report that we will go through. But in terms of the written report, any questions at this point from people? Then let's go to the motions that come out of this. The first one is with respect to a new fund called Partners for Belonging. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Hopefully those of you at home have the material in front of you as well. But this is a new legendary mission fund to provide an income stream for the purpose of the redevelopment of the Roy Street property. And so, as I say, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but let's go to the motion, which is on the next slide. So the motion is to establish the Partners for Belonging, a legendary mission vision fund. It is moved by Tim Rickard and seconded by Jan Blackburn. The motion is just the establishment of the fund. Later on, the terms of the fund will be drawn out, and they too will come to the congregation for approval. At this point, we're just establishing the fund, and then the terms of reference will follow. And actually, the trustees asked the Reverend Dr. Herb Gale to come up with the actual terms. Herb has not been able to do that yet, but he will do that, report to the trustees. The trustees will then pass that on through the session to the congregation as well. Any questions about the establishment of this fund? And that's all we're doing right now, is we're establishing this fund. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? And that too is carried. Next slide, please. So again, the trustees are really agents of the congregation, and it belongs to the congregation to appoint them. I think it's on a 3-year or 4-year rotating cycle. And so the people who are ending their 3-year term are Bob Fuster and May Yan, and both of them have agreed to stand again if that's the will of the congregation. So the motion moved by Tim and seconded by Jan Blackburn is to reappoint Bob Fuster and May Yan for a 3-year term ending in 2026. Moved and seconded. Any questions at all? All those in favor? Opposed? And that too is carried. Thank you. So the next one, just a little bit of background. Right now, at present, the trustees can make recommendations to the session, and the session can approve up to any funds from the trustees up to $10,000. They're changing that to $25,000. Tim, do you want to say a few words about that? And just stand here so that people online can see you as well.
Morning, everybody. So yes, as part of in our discussions and just realizing just what some of the expenses with the church are, $10,000 really isn't much anymore, as we all know even when we go to the grocery store. Not that hopefully $10,000 will cover your grocery bill, but the $10,000 just isn't. It just means that we're going to session a lot, even for relatively small expenses. So the request is to increase that to $25,000. based on, again, just based on our experience the last couple of years.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's go to the next slide then. So that is moved by Mei Yan and seconded by Paul Ray to amend Session 9 request for the funding in the policy and procedures for use of trust funds to increase the amount that Session has the authority to approve up to a total of $25,000 per request without congregational approval. So that's moved and seconded. Discussion on that. All those in favor? Opposed? And that too is carried. Thank you. Next slide. So the property committee is requesting $40,000 for the redevelopment, renovation of the 1967 Covenant Chapel. Stephen, did you want to say a few words about that? And if you do, come forward. Okay.
Good morning. Oop, that's really loud. Hello, 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 hello. The Covenant Chapel, as you know, is the 1967 chapel across the, right adjacent to the offices. In 2018, we had a black mold issue that happened right at the very peak of it, and we removed that, had that remediation done. And then at that time, once everything was restored, we were like, okay, so what are we going to do with this? The thought was to try to make it and modernize it a bit more. So in discussions with Session and the property committee, we made the recommendation, and it was brought forward last year at the annual meeting as well, that we redevelop the chapel and go forward with that. We remove, the direction from Session was, and the congregation's feeling was, that the primary purpose of the chapel must always remain worship. And we understood that and respected that, but didn't mean we couldn't be a bit more comfortable while we're worshiping it. So, to that end, we have removed the pews, the small 1967 pews, which were not very comfortable. These pews in this are much nicer than the ones that were in there. Reverend Marty, where did those go to? Those went to?
They actually went to the working center.
So they went to the working center. They took them as a donation. So that was good. They were able to be repurposed. There was a lot of nice maple in that. Then we, Margie Warren graciously went over with me to Toronto, and we had a look at some furniture for it, and we've picked some nice comfy padded chairs, which are designed specifically for a worship space, and new flooring, new carpeting, a new little storage room at the back of it, and a ramp. And the stage now is about 50% larger than it was as well. So it's going to lend itself much, much better to not only worship, but also to small funerals, small weddings, small concerts, and possibly even some corporate retreats, because it's a really cool space. We're making it very functional. We have outlets in the floor now, 5 of them, all connected to a projector and a projection system. That'll be something, it's actually amazing what we're looking at. So you'll be able to do corporate retreats, you'll be able to do little Bible studies for worship purposes, whatever you want to do. And Jeff Lehman Contracting, I don't know if you remember Jeff, he was a custodian here for many, many years. Lehman Contracting is his business now. He's been responsible for the work. I'm very excited and looking so forward to be able to show you all what the result is, because it's amazing. Anyway, so property then, property has requested the $40,000 from the trust funds. And if there's any questions for me?
Very good. Any questions? Yes.
This may not be a very serious question, but I just wondered, is the use of the word Covenant Chapel not used anymore, or is? Okay, so I just wondered whether that should be that.
Chapel.
Yeah. Okay, I knew, but I just wondered whether the name is not being used anymore.
That's my fault. That's my own nomenclature, only because it delineates that chapel from this chapel, this small chapel. So when I call it 1967 chapel, that's what I'm thinking. But Covenant Chapel is correct. It's just for my
So just a clarification for those of you who are online, we were just talking about the name of the chapel and just confirmation that it is still referred to as the Covenant Chapel. Okay? Any other questions? Okay, yes, thank you. Dawn, go ahead, Dawn. Please unmute yourself, Dawn. Not very well. Okay, just hold on, Dawn. I'm going to try to turn you up a little bit if I can. Okay, that one is there, that one is there. I'm going to go by this little thing right here. Try again, Dawn.
Okay, this is better. Hello?
I can hear you, Dawn. I may have to repeat you. You go ahead.
Okay, I noticed that this particular expenditure does not appear in the 2023 budget. Okay? Therefore, it has to come from the trust funds. My question is, what section of the trust funds will this $40,000 be drawn from?
Okay, very good question, Dawn. So what Dawn is saying is that it is not in the 2023 budget, this $40,000, and so therefore he assumes, and he is assuming correctly, that it is coming from the trust funds, and he's wondering what trust funds they're coming from. Eric, where's Eric? Oh, sorry, not Eric. Tim. Where's Tim? Tim? Yep.
It will likely either come from the general fund or the capital fund.
Okay, did you get that, Dawn?
Can't hear.
Okay, so it's going to come from the general fund or the capital fund, one of those two. Okay, very good. Any other questions? I know it's a little bit laborious, but it's important to have everybody's voice here. Okay, are you, let's go to the motion itself then. Next slide. So there's a bit of the budget for it. Next slide. Okay, so the motion moved by Tim Rickard, seconded by Paul Ray to approve the request for use of the trust funds from the Property Committee for a total of $40,000 for the purpose of renovating the chapel. Any further questions? Yep. Oh, and we're going to add covenant in the motion.
Covenant Chapel.
Covenant Chapel. Okay. Is that agreed by Tim and Paul? Tim, that's okay. Paul, where's Paul? Where did Paul go? Oh, there he is back there. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So all those in favor? Opposed? And that too is carried. Thank you very, very much. Appreciate that. Okay. Let's move on to the next slide then. So this is, again, a request to the congregation for trust fund monies, and it is from the Finance Committee, and I'm wondering whether or not either Eric or Diana, whether you can speak to this. Now, is Diana here? I know she was. Diana, can you speak to this? Can you come forward? And when you're speaking, Diana, you need to use the mic, but also speak directly into this as well.
Thanks. So, can you hear me? Okay. In last year's budget, we hadn't taken any money for the trust funds for capital expenditures, and there have been a number of expenditures that were come up and were unexpected, and Stephen said that he could speak more to those expenditures. So as a result, we never requested any funds from the trust funds, although we had put in for $20,000 in the last year's budget, but that was for something else, and these expenditures were something that was unprepared. So as a result, we wanted to go back and get the trust funds money for last year's budget. And if Stephen wants to clarify. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Diana. Any requests for clarifications on that, or are you ready to go towards the motion? Any requests for clarification? Let's go to the motion itself then. Next page. Next slide, please. Yeah. Okay, so that again, next slide as well. So here's the motion to approve the request for the use of trust funds from the Finance Committee to cover 2022 capital costs of $37,372 and excess custodial labor costs of $7,500 for a total of $44,872. Moved by Tim Rickard and seconded by Mei Yan. Any discussion on that motion? Yes, Don. Go ahead, Don. You have to unmute yourself again, Don.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. There is precedent for this. We've used it before. The money was drawn from the future fund. Now, my question is, looking at the description future fund on page 18, do we have enough money in the future fund to cover this, especially since the annual spending rate shall be 5% of the total fund value?
Okay, thank you for that, Don. I'm going to ask Tim to come forward again.
Thanks, Don. Specifically, we didn't specify as the trustees what fund it would come from. Again, it likely will come from either the General Endowment Fund, the Capital Improvement Fund, or potentially the Future Fund.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question, Don?
Tim, how much money's left in the future fund?
Taking you to page 24 of the annual report, the Future Fund has $44,093 in it as of November 30th of 2022.
So, am I still on?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, okay. So this will potentially, if it comes out of the future fund, wipe out that fund, really, as an effective fund.
Yeah, but we haven't specified that it will come from the Future Fund.
Okay, but I'm just pointing out, this was the fund that we previously used when they were on, what would you call it, unexpected expenses, and this is going to run it down to virtually nothing. So you might want to consider one of the other funds.
But as I said, Don, we haven't specified, and we haven't said that it specifically would be the Future Fund. My guess is the majority will likely come from the Capital Improvement Fund, and to me, the only part that we might be the labor cost of $7,500, maybe, but the other $37,000 would come from the Capital Improvement Fund. May's got her hand up.
Okay.
I just want to comment, and as a reminder, that it is up to the trustees to decide which funds the expenses will be withdrawn. It is not a decision made here by the congregation.
Okay, thank you, May. Any other questions? Are you ready for the motion itself? Okay, all those in favor? And those opposed? And that too is carried. Thank you, and thank you, Tim. Yep, go ahead.
So thank you for everybody for the motions. With Bob not being here, I believe he was going to speak to a couple of things in the report. I'm not going to read his report in full, obviously, but I do want to draw everyone's attention. If you look at page 24, the third column, the bottom of that, you will see that from either members of the congregation and or some estates, we received approximately $276,000 this year, which was quite significant. And if you go back to page 23 at the end, the four estates specifically were Jean McDonald, Betty Laurie, Jean Jarose, and Thelma, and I hope I pronounced this right, Slatoff. and so we were. It was very we were very fortunate to receive those funds in the last year, and I wanted to draw attention to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. I appreciate that deeply. Excellent. And it is absolutely wonderful as a congregation that St. Andrews has such an active trust funds, and that I've only been here a year and a half, but each of the 2 years, calendar years that I've been here, people have added to the funds, and already in this calendar year, 2023, people have added substantially to the funds as well. And just one final note with respect to that, the trust fund year ends in the end of November, I believe, and so anything that came to the trust funds in December is added into 2023, okay? So yeah, excellent use of funds and contribution towards those funds within St. Andrews, a beautiful ministry within this congregation. Thank you. Let's move on then to the Property Committee. Stephen, anything that you wanted to add to the Property Committee? Now, as written, any questions for Stephen? Okay, very good. Thank you. Let's move on to the Finance Committee. And there will be a few comments and also some added motions in the Finance Committee as well. And I believe Eric is going to take us through this. Eric, I think we have it set up so that you should be able to be heard by all without me having to repeat everything that you say. So go ahead.
Thank you. First, I'll do a quick sound check. Am I coming through okay?
Can everybody hear Eric? Yes, you are, Eric.
Perfect. Please let me know at any point. I will try to speak as clearly and as loudly as possible, but if the audio does drop, please just let me know and I will slow down. But I do have a short deck that we will go through to lay out where we landed in 2022, as well as the proposed budget for 2023. So if we can move forward into that.
Okay, go ahead, Eric. Can you just give us what page are you working on right now? And so this is is this in the addendum or in the actual report itself?
I think there should be in the report itself. There's a few slides that I was going to use, but again, if that's not convenient, I can also speak directly to the budget materials, and that's perfectly fine as well.
Oh, okay.
But
so
no, I think it's up on the screen. So
it's up on the screen. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And if we can go ahead to the next slide, which is just lays out the budget process we followed for this year, very similar to last year, where essentially, and this is really just an opportunity to thank both the Finance Committee members, but also Operational Council and Session for all of their feedback into the budget process. A lot of people did help with this, and a lot of people looked through the numbers this year, so deeply appreciated for all the support in that regard. If we can go to the next slide. So the next slide talks about the 2022, where we landed. And again, I think the simple message here that I wanted to share with the congregation is that 2022 continued to be a year that was affected by COVID. The pandemic had an impact certainly in our first 2 years, and the third year of the pandemic was no real difference. We knew we were going to have a budget deficit last year. We were hoping it would be around 75,000. We are going to be reporting a larger deficit. It's in the 139,000 range for 2022, which is a significant figure. Although it's important to remember the context of it. We had quite a large surplus in 2020, a smaller deficit in 2021, and a surplus in 2019. So I'll talk a little bit more about the COVID impact in a couple of slides, but COVID really did have an impact, and that makes the budgeting process a little bit more challenging, but it certainly was something that affected us in 2022, and there will still be some impacts into 2023. Can we go to the next slide? Just a little bit deeper analysis of the 2022 trends. Just a couple of quick points that we had about a 5% drop in our budgets givings for the year. in comparison to 2021, and that was particularly around the holidays, and that was a bit of that COVID impact is hanging with us. We also had a drop in our TV givings relative to 2020 and 2021, where we'd had some nice growth in those areas. But I don't want to leave the impression that everything was bad news. We actually had some nice strong givings on the Presbyterian sharing side. We were up almost 4% there as well. So a bit of a mixed bag certainly on the giving side, but you could tell that COVID was having a bit of an impact there as well. And the other thing, as was noted earlier, in terms of inflationary pressures, we're not seeing it just at the grocery store, but also in some of the things that we've had to purchase within the congregation. And that, of course, includes our TV ministry. The costs are going up to be able to put on some of the ministries that we have. So that was an impact for 2022 as well. On the next slide, a couple of particular things about COVID. Two in particular that I'll highlight, and donations I'll talk a little bit about because they have been down through COVID, but parking's another one that was almost a $70,000 a year revenue generating source for the church, and it was down in 2022 to about $10,000 a year, so a drop of about $60,000, which is really quite material. And you can see between that and some of the drop in donations, that's really where our deficit figure comes from. So we've had some help through COVID, particularly with government programming that's helped to balance things off. And as was noted in our previous reports, the trust fund disbursement policy has helped to also offset some of the losses. But those items there that have been affected by COVID really have had an impact. The slide on the next page shows just a little bit of the drop in givings through this period, and it's a steady drop off, and that's where we really are hoping with this coming budget to be able to turn that around. And now that we are coming out of the pandemic, I know it's not quite back to normal yet, but hopefully we will be on a better footing for the next year, and that can help make a difference as well as we set up for the 2023 year. If we can go to the next slide, and this is just one more visual about how the last 4 years have shaped out. The blue column, for those that can see the difference of the colors, and I apologize if it's not overly clear, but it's the revenue, then the expenses in red, and the net income is the green difference. And you'll see that it was positive for a couple of years, but we've now had a couple of negative years, with 2022 being the biggest drop. So the next slide, just a couple of key considerations and sort of what we're thinking about for the year ahead. And this is where, again, we know that we've got a strong financial base. Despite the deficit that we've had some amazing amounts of givings come in for the year, and it shows we've got good financial vitality or life in the congregation. And we also have lots of assets at our disposal and lots of potential ideas to generate new revenue as well. And that includes some of the projects you've heard about through the Property and Trust Fund reports, the Roy Street project, the renovations to Covenant Chapel. And we are expecting that parking will come back as well. On the downside, we know that the economy is still not ticking along perfectly yet. Inflation's still there. Stock markets aren't perfect, and some of that will have an impact, and we know it does affect people's ability to give. On the sort of going a bit further, though, we're not expecting we'll be able to balance the budget with respect to just reductions to our expenses alone. We've already reduced a fair bit. We're trying to make sure that we don't go too much farther because we don't want to affect our main ministries. And so another piece is that it will take a little longer for our alternative revenues to kick in. So all of that leads towards, we do expect we're going to have another deficit for this year coming up. The question will be, can we overachieve through some increased focus in both in terms of revenue generation, as well as hopefully some for the congregation to respond and hopefully add in a little bit more into the collection plate if people can in the year ahead. The next slide just points out sort of a breakdown of our church, our spending within the church by major category. It's a pie chart, and again, what it really shows is the biggest components are in terms of our ministry, our Christian education, property, worship, and music. And after that, some of the smaller categories are general, admin, and the Presbyterian sharing component, which is just the flow through that goes. So it'll show as an expense as well as a revenue source. On the next slide, the plan for 2023. So we do have a budget deficit that we are forecasting, and it could be in the same magnitude. The one thing I do want to note here, and this was something that I don't think I clarified very well for session when we did the presentation there, was that does include a proposal that you'll hear about later on with respect to engaging a consultant, Lauren Wozniak, and that has a potential cost of $31,000. If we are able to offset some of that cost through either additional donations that come in as well as potential trust fund usage, that will reduce that figure, and that will leave us in a smaller deficit component, but it is still a sizable figure. As we talked through this both at Operational Council as well as at Finance and with Session, there is an action plan, though, that we did want to put forward to really make sure that we are keeping the congregation in session very well up to date with what's going on, and taking a far more deliberate and targeted approach with respect to our communications, our revenue generating ideas, and just in general around the TV ministry too. So we'll continue to analyze our trends and report back on things often. We do both hope and expect we'll be able to overachieve, but it's a big jump to get back to balance. We know we want to work back that way as quickly as possible, and we do need at some point to get back to balance, but it's going to be just a little bit challenging to do so quickly because we're still being affected by COVID and by sort of our return to normalcy. And with the weaker economy, we know we're going to need a little bit more time to get there. So those were the main slides I wanted to go through. The other, there are tables there, and I know Diane is in person and probably can answer some of the questions more directly, but I'll leave it there and maybe open things up. Other than to say, really deeply appreciating all of the contributions that have continued through the year, and even though it's a challenging situation, we're not the only organization that's been affected by COVID. A lot of other ones have taken quite a hit, and actually, overall, we're doing relatively well. So there is still a lot of hope in the budget numbers, even though it's a little bit of a challenging time that we're working through. So we really do encourage people to continue to keep us in mind as you're enjoying all of the wonderful ministries that the church offers. Think about whether you can continue to increase your donations through the year. It's something that many of us won't necessarily actively think about with respect to, I've got my pre-authorized givings and we may not make an immediate change, but it's not a difficult thing to do. Just contact Hannah in the office, and it's something that if people can think about that, it's wonderful if they can. So I'll turn it back to you, moderator, though, for any questions and or anything else that we do want to add, and Diana may have some thoughts as well.
Thank you, Eric. So we'll, first of all, Diana, do you have any further thoughts? Eric was just wondering that. Yep, come forward, wonderful. And then after Diana has made her presentation, then we'll open it up to the floor of the congregation for any questions or clarification.
So a lot of my comments I've wrote in the addendum to the annual report, which I have shared with you, or that was sent out. And my feelings are out there for everyone. So it's not like that we're in a great position, but we're also so much alive. You know, we have to make decisions. Sorry? Like that? Okay, sorry. Okay. You know, as Lloyd had said in 1999, the costs of the church are the costs of the church. You know, we're working, you have the staff that are in the church, they're at minimum levels. You Yeah, we have sometimes concerns as to whether someone gets sick and goes off on long-term leave. What are our thoughts? What are our backup plans? So it's not like we're being extravagant, you know. And it's so the costs, you know. And if we do any reduction of costs, it's going to be drastic. And that's not who we are. And if we want to survive, that's not the way we should be going. You know, we have a lot of ministries that we're so proud of. Things that we do for the community, the TV ministry. That's another hard thing. There's a lot of money that goes out there, but there are so many people that are getting older, and it's the older generation that are not coming into church, but are really want to be part of church. That is supporting. So what are we going to do? Are we going to get rid of that? You know, those are drastic changes that we have to think about, and I don't think that's where we want to be. You know, it's like our past, you know, our story doesn't change. You know, we've been through that before, you know, but we have to have action plans to move forward. And I think that we are at that point now that we need to take that first step. You know, what is that? You know, we've done things that we haven't done before. Like we opened our church, the warming center. Wow. I've got friends in other churches saying, that's amazing that your church did that. You know, we couldn't do it for our church, you know, but you guys stepped up, and they're now like looking at us and following what we're doing because it was so impactful. Of course, there are going to be costs in some way, but we were helping people, and you know, with talking about these, I can't think of the term, but you know, with the Roy Street project, that is just so amazing. That we're even leaning that way, and I think that's such a positive way to go, and such a great way for the use of our space. And one of the meetings that I attended, you know, when they had, you know, a lot of people with parents with I'm dry water. Parents with kids with disabilities, they have you know. They're concerned as to what they're going to do when they're not around. You know, where are they going to go? And we hope to be that home for them. Sorry, that's an emotional. That's really important to me. That project is really important to me. You know, we're doing things and we're moving forward. You just have to take that leap of faith. But we're not going to be doing crazy stuff. We're going to be just watching what we do and think about doing things a little bit differently. You know, the operational council is getting together and they're looking at this church saying, okay, how can we use this space? How can we rent out some of the space differently? And it's not going to be me that solves the problem. It's not going to be Mary that solves the problem. It's not going to be Marty that solves the problem. It's all of us working together and coming up with ideas and just taking the steps, that leap of faith, that hopeful realism.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Diana. One of the things that's so powerful, even in terms of this new ministry, Partners in Belonging, there are a number of people who have been gathering together. We met together twice, actually. And Diana has been a part of those meetings. But even more importantly, Tyler's been a part of those meetings. And Tyler is really interested, excited about what this may mean for him as well. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful way of meeting the needs not only of our own congregation, but out into the community as well. So thank you for your words. Thank you for your emotion. Thank you for your powerful leadership, Diana. Questions that people may have? Okay. And I'm looking both online and within the congregation. Questions that you have in terms of the financial statements. Okay, I don't see anything. Before we go to the motion to approve the proposed budget, there was, and again this is in your packet, the session was looking at the possibility of engaging with Church Helper to support the work of the welcoming committee And before I say anything more about that, I'm actually going to invite, I think Gary Grant was going to say a few words about that. Gary?
Lauren Waslick actually has been with us for at least a year plus in the background, helping to make some very significant changes in our ministry here at St. Andrews. This partially or mostly spun out of the vision statement that we had done as a congregation in 2018 and 2019, and also on some recommendations of the Credence and Company, who was the consulting company that we use from Cambridge, and their report, hopefully many of you have seen. Already we've had made, with Lauren's help, significant changes in the website. So if you haven't had a chance to look at it, by all means check it out. It's under www.standrewskw.com, and it's a work that constantly needs updating because our programs change also on a regular basis. So there's a tremendous amount of work needed in that area. This morning we had the privilege of opening the Welcoming Center, which was in front of Covenant Chapel. That's been under development. It started because our team, the Welcoming and Membership team, was looking for handout material for visitors to the congregation. And we found it was sadly out of date and often didn't reflect who we were as a congregation. And we realized that just duplicating old material was not going to work, and we also needed to reflect changes in the community. So one of those obviously is the use of QR codes, which I'm just beginning to understand. If you look on the back of the pew, there's a QR code in front of you. So those of you who have cell phones at some point, read that QR code and that will automatically bump you into our website. So and a number of other areas. So we're excited about that. It's going to develop very nicely and is a very special way of welcoming particularly visitors to our congregation. We also, or through Lauren's help, have been very successful in developing social media. Particularly, you and I will be most familiar with Facebook. Over the last 6 months, for sure, it's been very obvious that we have a lot of new people in the congregation, and in many cases, in asking them, they were attracted to our church by the website and also through Facebook. So these again are areas that we will be able to do when we engage a church helper. I think that's basically it. If we could put up the motion as it's worded. Okay, so okay.
On page 22.
There we go. Yep, that's it.
There it is there. Yep.
And the only other thing that oh yes, it's all there in fact. So the funding for the church helper contract, which would be for 1 year, half of it will be paid through the trust funds, which they have already agreed to, and the remaining half we're assuming, and I'm confident we'll be able to collect that through dedicated individuals over and above their normal givings. St. Andrew as a congregation has always been responsive to special donations when it's clearly defined, whether it be for bricks and mortar or for mission or whatever it was. So I'm confident that we'll be able to raise the other half of it, which is probably about $15,000 by special donations. Thank you.
So just to clarify, again, thank you very much, Gary. I appreciate that. So just to clarify, right now this 31,250 is in the budget and is part of the $144,000 deficit. What this motion does is it takes it out of the budget. Okay, so the budget deficit would be reduced by 31,250, and instead, as the motion reads, 50% of it will come from the trust funds, and 50% will come from a special congregational appeal over and above the budget, specifically geared to those people who are able to raise that $15,000, $16,000 in addition to their normal givings. That's what the motion is. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this motion moved by, that's not the one we want. Isn't there a slide? Okay, so go back to the other one. My apologies. So we don't have a mover and a seconder here. So Gary, could you move this? Is there a seconder for this motion? And Andrew Height is seconding this. So moved and seconded to begin an engagement project using the services of Lauren Waslick as we had indicated there. Any questions about this motion? Yes. Glenn, you're going to have to come to the front, I know, because people need to hear you online as well. Okay? Just come around this way so that people can see you. Yeah, thank you.
As a person running 3 or 4 websites presently, the cost of hosting here is about 3 times what it should be. You have $1,500 in your outline here for hosting the website?
I think it'll be more than just websites. I think there are other things.
Well, I can host a website and put everything up for $500 a year.
Yeah. No, I
So
think that's-
$1,000, $1,500 is too much.
Yeah, I can't tell you specifically what the cost
Well, these are, we should, if you're running a website, you need analytics running for it. Like how many people come to your website?
Well, I can tell you that, for instance, on the
That should be all
family
part of-
dinner, there was like 3,000 hits on that particular announcement, and we had around, I don't have the exact numbers, but more than 250.
We have a sign out front that we paid, it's $30,000. We have 2 blank pages, generally every day. There's 44,000 people pass every day.
Yeah.
Why aren't we making use of that?
Can I respond to that a little?
Well, I'm just saying, you can run a
Give
bit.
him a chance to respond, please. Thank you.
We are responding on that. For instance, parking, which is, has been on the last couple of weeks. We have run out of parking spaces. They're all rented at this point. So parking has increased significantly, and I think most of that was because of the use of the electronic sign.
Well, that's great. But I mean, there's a lot of things you could put up there on a daily basis. If you get 40-some-odd thousand people going by, 10% are going to look at it. Another 10% are going to record it. That's how advertising works. But if you're going to run a website and all of the SEOs that work with it, you have to monitor this. And if you're spending $30,000, what are you getting for that? That's worth 300,000 hours a year. What are you getting for 300,000 hours? I mean, at $100 an hour, that's what I can tell you what the cost is. But what are you getting for it? It's a great program, but you got to monitor it. That's my big thing.
So I think, just to clarify, I think what Glenn's question is assuming that 31,000 is all to do with the website, and I think that's wrong. If you could clarify that, Gary.
Well, I'm not, I don't know exactly how much the particular costs are for.
I think we should be knowing this before we get into it. That's really what I'm asking. I run these things.
So if we could go back to, could we go back to the job outline or the contract outline of the things that are there, the service agreement including, yes, okay. So if we could go over all of that for a moment. So these are the, so it's auditing current communications, all of those things, and you should have a copy of those. Most people should have a copy of those. Go to the next slide, please. Creating a policy regarding church-wide promotions, develop a 12-month calendar of communication, audit current engagement, So this is all well beyond anything that is going on in the webpage or on the
I realize that, but
website.
it's all marketing of the church. And you should be able to monitor it and how you do it.
Yeah, it's a little bit more than
I
marketing.
realize it, but it's a whole picture. You're not monitoring.
Yes.
You're not talking about how your analytics run it, how many people come to the website, how many people pass a thing. You got to do all these things if you're going to spend that kind of money.
So it sounds to me like you want to be on the committee.
No, I don't want to be on the committee, but I can give you a lot of help because
Wonderful.
I do it on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think the committee would be, or the team
But
would
you're
be.
spending too much money for what you're getting.
Okay, thank you.
That's my comment.
Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate that. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Glenn. Yes, Jan, please come forward. Please come forward. No, you have to come forward, I'm sorry, so that everybody can hear what you're saying.
I think that the terms and agreement are very carefully and detailed, well laid out in this document. So you'll find there everything that Lauren will be doing, and I think we get more than our money's worth from what she accomplishes for us.
Thank you, Jan. I appreciate that. Any other? Eric, do you want to say something?
Since I need to leave my current location. But I am supportive of the proposal as well. I do think it's an important point that's been raised that if there's a way to find savings within the proposal or if things cost a little less, that's always important. It's something we always look for as finance, but I do support this because I think it's the type of investment we need to make to continue to grow our base and grow our long-term revenue source as well. So I am supportive of it. I do apologize that I wasn't able to be there in person, and I do have to leave, unfortunately, to go pick up my son who is swimming today. But I know Diane is there for any further questions about the budget. But I just wanted to quickly endorse this proposal as well, because I think it's important as an investment in our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate that. Any other comments? Diana. So can we go back to the motion as well? Yeah.
Thanks. I think it's more than just the website that, and if you read the detailed report that, or recommendation that Lauren had put together, it's like some of these things are things that we just don't do, or we just don't have the time. We just don't have the time to do, or it takes other volunteer time to put this stuff together. So who's going to be on that? Who's going to be on that committee? One of the things that they're talking about is developing a branding package. So what is St. Andrews? What do we look? What do we look like? How are we going to? It's all about part of it's about marketing ourselves to the community. What it as we're a St. Andrews Presbyterian, but our website says St. Andrews. We're St. Andrews KW. What is a symbol that we want to have to represent St. Andrews? Is it the image of our church? Is it the stylized, is it the stylized cross? How can somebody recognize that it's us out there if we don't have something that's consistent? This is kind of the easiest one to kind of touch base on, so from a branding perspective. Years ago, I had chaired the KW Arts Awards, and every year the image changed. And so you never could associate that award or that ceremony with what was happening. And then the year I came about, we changed the branding of it, and they had given an award called the Denny, and that became the symbol of everything that we did. That was on every letterhead, that was on every poster everything that we did, and it was used. And that's how people recognized finally, after 10 plus years, that there were arts awards in Kitchener-Waterloo. So I think at one point we might have had an identity or a branding, but I think it's gone lost, and that may not be who we are today. So I think that's one of the things that, that is part of this package. So I think that in order to get a full view of what it's all about, I think you need to read the job description and not just focus on the website.
Thank you very much, Diana. Any other comments or questions? Okay, Catherine. Catherine, go ahead, please, Catherine.
Thank you. I speak in support of this motion. Lauren is a proven quantity within our congregation. She's experienced, she has wonderful creativity, and I've been very impressed with her work. I think the money would be well spent for that 1 year so to build upon this foundation we already have. As we look to our future, a good investment in our future would be spent with the appointment of this particular position for this coming year. So I speak in favor of this.
Thank you, Catherine. Stephen, come forward.
I appreciate Glenn's comments, what he said, but I just wanted to bring to you the proposal from Church Helper, and Glenn speaks directly to what you were saying. And in the key communications that she has here, it specifically lines out, meet with key ministry leaders to discuss the time and financial resources tied to each communication channel and to work to determine the value. So as you were pointing out, perhaps we do spend too much money on hosting a website. However, that's exactly what this proposal is saying, is that they're going to review those things and make sure that the money is being spent as effectively as possible. That's my interpretation.
Thank you, Stephen. Any other comments or questions, either from people who are here or people who are online? You got to come forward. You just, it's okay. Please come forward. Yeah, I know you're not against it either, Glenn. I know you're speaking from your heart, and I appreciate that.
I'm not speaking from my heart. I'm speaking from reality, what I do every day. I'm not against the idea of what you're doing here, concept, but I think you need a little more research and documentation on what you're going to get. Because what it reminds me, I know it's there, but I get something like that every day from India or someplace, but they don't tell you what they're going to do really, the end result. You have to monitor this. Like how many people watch our website? What words do they look for in our website? What do they look for in our SEO? These are things you have to know before you go into something like this. You have to do a little research before you're going to do it. That's all I'm saying. To spend $30,000 in something like this, you'd be better off to spend $4,000 or $5,000 and do the research, and then do your planning.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Andrew, do you want to come forward?
I would just like to say, if you visit the St. Andrews webpage at all in the last year, you would see that's been totally redone, right? Like the website prior to the spring of 2022, in my opinion, as I'll say it, a young person, was absolutely abysmal and hard to navigate, right? Like we did not have a very good looking webpage at all. It did not speak to what St. Andrews as a church is. And I would say that what we've streamlined in our new website is working immensely. We're getting a lot of traction across the board with that. And it's not just the website, it's our social media presence. Lauren has worked tirelessly to set that up. And if that was to end, then what do we do after that, right? We have no functioning social media presence at all. It's not the responsibility of Mel to take that on. It's not the responsibility of myself or Marty. We need someone who knows what they're doing to make this work. And so, Glenn, I understand your frustrations, but the website has come a long way in only a year. And outside of engagement, right, like Lauren has worked with Marty numerous times on projects. She's worked with me. She's worked with Anne Marie for Noon Hour concerts. It's across the board where her engagement is coming across. So it's a vital opportunity to hold on to at St. Andrews, in my opinion.
Thank you, Andrew. Just one other clarification. So this work that Lauren would be supporting is not just the work of a individual. It's working. Lauren would be working very, very closely with the welcoming and newcomers team, and this initiative is a team initiative, with Lauren being a resource person for that team. That's why it's just 1 year. Okay, so that we're trying to create an opportunity for that ministry to really move forward effectively. Any other questions, comments? Yes, Pauline, please come forward.
I just wanted to clarify a little bit Glenn's comment about the $1,500 that was put in there. And it was a bit of a placeholder. Some of it may be website costs and other things, but it was really up to $1,500, and it was just to give the, my perspective anyway, the membership group, the
team, welcoming team.
The team that's working on this, a bit of a budget to work around, because when we're looking at engagement, we're looking at communications, there's going to be, a need for some costs that go along with that. So although it may say up there that it's, for website, domain, and other related costs. So it's not just the website. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Pauline. Any other comments or questions? Are you ready for the question? So again, just to clarify that if this motion passes, we take the $31,250 out of the budget. That's why we needed to do this before we go to the budget. So we take the $31,250 out of the budget, and then this comes as an expense outside of the budget. Half from the trustee funds and half from a concentrated appeal to congregational members who can give outside of their budgetary givings. Any further questions? Are you ready for the question? So it is, again, who did we have that? Gary was moving that, and somebody, and Andrew Height seconded that. All those in favor? And those opposed? And that carries. Thank you. So now let's go to the budget itself, okay? So we will note that, yes. So moved by Eric. Eric is no longer here, so Diana, you'll have to do this, okay? We will have to make an amendment because the proposed budget in 2023 includes that $31,250. So we need an amendment. Hopefully Diana and Terry will both be happy with this amendment. So it would be moved by Diana, seconded by Terry, that the proposed budget less $31,250 for the engagement coordinator be accepted. Are you okay with that, Diana? Terry, are you okay with that? Does everybody understand that revision? So we're taking the $31,250 out of the budget. Discussion on the budget for 2023. Okay. And this goes just beyond what we were just talking about, the whole budget. Whatever questions you may have, this is your opportunity to ask of the finance team, committee. Are you ready for the question? Don, go ahead, Don. Thank you, Don.
Just a question here now. If the congregation is not forthcoming with about $16,000 on the voluntary, over and above their giving basis, if you remove this from the budget, how are you going to pay the total?
Well, Don, I think that's a very good question. Okay. Does anybody have a comment on that? How would we respond to Don's question? So Don's question was, if we accept this right now, we're taking the full $31,250 out of the budget. So what happens if the amount of, say, $16,000 is not raised by congregational members outside of their budget givings? What do we do then? Yes, Yola.
I would hope that wouldn't happen, but there is a contract termination in this church helper. So for any reason that the church helper or St. Andrews wishes to terminate the ongoing portion of this contract, both parties agree to give 30 days written notice to do so. I don't know whether that would help.
Actually, that is very helpful in terms of this discussion. So again, we hope that that would not happen, but that is a possibility. Stephen, come forward, please. Half. 16, about 16, yeah.
So my proposal would be that if $16,000 has been approved today from the trust funds, that when we come close to the exhaustion of that 16,000, we then come to the congregation a meeting at that point for a decision of whether to proceed or not. And the proceeding could be, again, from trust funds to continue it if the 16,000, and I agree with Yola, I hope it doesn't come to that, but that's a proposal I was thinking.
Okay, so is that any different than what Yolanda is saying? Those of you, so basically what you're saying is before we terminate, we'd have to have the congregation decide. Do you want to make that as a separate amendment, or do you want to? Okay, so going back to Diana and to Terry. Okay, so now this is where we get really interesting. So we've already changed it. So we've got it so that the 31,250 is removed. Now we're suggesting that if the funds are not raised, if sufficient funds are not raised before we go to termination of the contract, as per the contract, a congregational meeting be held. That's what you're suggesting. Yeah.
It's good. Yes, because when we get close to it, that would also address some of what what Glenn was saying, in that it gives you an opportunity then to evaluate the program and to look at that as a congregation. Because we're making a decision as a congregation based on the proposal. That's fine. And we don't want to micromanage things. I'm not suggesting that for a minute. But at the same time, when the money that we have given, 16,000, has run out, then staff can come back and say to the congregation, for this 16,000, this is what we have, this is what has happened, this is the wonderful work that we are doing. Will you continue to accept and continue to support this? How exactly that would happen, I don't know. People that are smarter than me would have to figure that out, but that's my thought.
Well, unfortunately, we do have to figure it out because we need to put it into an amendment somehow. So, yeah. So, Terry.
Would this be a better amendment to be made to the original motion for the contract, for the church helper contract? That's already been passed?
Yeah, that's already been passed.
Okay.
Yeah. So we can go two ways. We can create an amendment, all right, or we can ask the clerks as we pass this already propose that it's in the discussion, so that we know that it's in the discussion and we can make a decision based on that discussion. Diana.
Reports that were for the 2022 annual meeting. There had been a report that had been prepared, a case study, the part number 2, a case study how to fund a new ministry on page 4, and it had been drafted by Herb Gale, talking about where they had some support from the trust funds for the ministry, and then the balance of the trust funds were coming from like donations from the church members or givings, and they did not start that ministry until the donations had been received. So, I guess that's a decision that we have to make, whether we want to follow the approach that Knox Church in Guelph did with the givings and the donations, or whether you want to, go at, doesn't start the ministry until $16,000 from the congregation is received, or whether we want to start the process, as Stephen had said, and then either hope the donations come in, and if not, come back to the church for additional trust funds.
Okay, so this is getting a little bit more complicated again. So, so we do have a amended motion. The suggestion is to amend it in terms of what Stephen is suggesting, and that is, if I get this correct, that before we actually we go ahead, but before we actually move towards termination of the contract as per what Yolanda is saying, that we call a congregational meeting to assess beforehand. So that's one thing. What Diana is suggesting is completely different. Do we want to, even though we've agreed to engage Church Helper, do we want to wait until all the funds have been raised before we actually sign the contract? Okay? That's my understanding of what Diana is saying. So, yes, May.
I don't think I've ever gotten up so much at an annual meeting. Okay, first of all, in the budget that was presented by Eric, I believe the $31,000 was included in the budget?
Correct.
Okay, what I would like to say is we don't take that amount out of the budget. Leave it in. But we still go ahead with the recommendation that was proposed by Herb Gale in the report, and I support that. So when you can do it either way. It's already in there that they're going to ask the trustees for half the amount. Then, so when the trustees transfer that amount, and when the donations come in, then you can do what I call bookkeeping work, because it's a budget. It can be changed. Why do we have to go through all these amendments and motions? That's all I have to say.
So here's the third suggestion then. Now, this is getting fun. Okay, so what, as I understand what May is saying, is we leave the motion exactly the way it is right now, right? Without any amendments, so that 31,250 stays in there, right? With the understanding that we are doing some fundraising to support that budget by asking 50% of those 31,250 from the trustees, well, from the congregation, but through the trustees, which we actually have already done. Okay, so half of it is already there, and that we also do the fundraising for the remainder through people. So we're doing the fundraising part of that to support the original budget. So interesting as well. So we're giving a little bit of leeway here. That usually by this time we would have been at the amendment to the amendment to the amendment to the amendment, but I don't like going down that path.
I think May's suggestion is a wonderful one. Two things. I think, first of all, we need to consider whether Church Helper would accept the agreement, knowing that 6 months down the road, if we don't have enough faith to raise the money to show that we believe in this particular initiative, then I wonder how that would make Lauren feel, right? Second of all, we need to take a leap of faith that if we don't take advantage of what Church Helper can offer us, I question what the long-range survival rate of this congregation is going to be. Because if we take a look at the ages in average, we're not going to be here forever if we don't start growing our base. And we have made huge strides in that, in terms of growth in Sunday school, growth in the community events, growth in, look at the Pancake Sunday last week. We had over 20 volunteers, and we had about 120 people, not counting the helpers, in attendance. So we need to keep up the momentum, and Lauren can help us do that. She, as Catherine Hurdle said, Lauren has a proven record for us. So it's not like we're taking a huge risk here.
Thank you. I'm going to make what's called a moderator's ruling, and that is that from my perspective, we're at the point where I think we've agreed. Now, anybody can contest that ruling, but because of the last 2 or 3 speakers, I think they're saying the same thing. If we've already approved the previous one about the position, that was debated and approved. This one, if we leave it just the way it is, those 2 motions, what they do is, I believe, what the last 3 or 4 speakers have said. So we're including it in the motion, but we're recognizing that we're doing those other 2 fundraising things to then meet that budget. So I'm just making a ruling that we don't have to do anything of that. Stephen, come ahead.
I'm not challenging the moderator at all. I'm getting confused. I just want a point of order. Where are we in the motions? Okay. Did we not already remove her salary from the budget?
No.
Oh, it wasn't voted on?
Wasn't voted on.
So just discussed.
That's what
okay, thank you.
Yeah. So what was the amendment that was given was to remove it. But I'm suggesting if we go back to just the motion that is right now, I think that gets us to where the last 2, 3 speakers have been talking about. Does that make sense? So in other words, we're including it in the motion, but the last motion said we're trying to do these 2 other things to make sure that we meet that. Is that clear in my mind? It may not be clear in your mind. And that's my fault, not your fault. Okay? The mover and the seconder of that amendment, would you be willing to withdraw that amendment so we're just dealing with the motion as it is right now? Absolutely. Okay? So if we deal with it right now, let me just work this through with you again. So if we deal with the motion just the way it is, then we're including that 31,250 because it's already included in the budget. But the last motion has already said we're trying to raise those funds through the trustees and through a special appeal. So we've already made that motion. That was moved and seconded and passed. Yes. Okay? So then this simply leaves it in there, but recognizing that we're trying to do exactly what the last 3 or 4 speakers have been said we're trying to do. Is that, would you now, does that make sense to you? Do you agree with my ruling with respect to that? Agreed? Disagreed? Agreed? Everybody agrees. Fantastic. Let's go with this motion then. Thank you. That's wonderful. Okay? So again, the motion moved by, and again, is Diana because Eric had to leave, second by Terry, that the proposed budget for 2023 be accepted. Any further discussion? I don't think I have ever gone through amendments and amendments and amendments and then scrap them all just to go back to the original. That's a new one for me. That's pretty phenomenal. Yeah. Okay? Any questions? All those in favor? Oh, sorry. That's what the agreement was. I asked if you had agreed to that. That's the agreement. Did you agree to me making that? Are you okay? Yeah. Okay. I know policy within the Presbyterian Church in Canada, Robert's Rules of Orders. I'm not saying that I'm the best, but yes, I think that's what the agreement was. Right? Because someone at any point can contest any ruling that I make, right? So that's why I asked if you agreed with my ruling with respect to that. Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. I get contested all the time. Yeah, especially at home. Yeah. So, okay, all those, are you ready for the question then? All those in favor? Opposed? Hallelujah. Someone start singing. Okay, that's great. All right, very good. Let's continue on then. Next slide, please. So now, Human Resources, Bev and Pauline. Anything further, Bev, Pauline, that you want to say? No, everything is fine there. So now there's a motion. Now remember, we were talking about 5 through 11. We've dealt with them all. Now we're just kind of approving all of them together. Okay, 5 through 11. Pauline is moving and Dawn is seconding to adopt reports 5 to 11. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? And opposed and carried. Dawn Upper. Dawn Upper. Okay. Next slide, please. So now the worship committee. Catherine, anything further that you would like to add to the report, Catherine?
No, unless there are questions, the report as written, moderator.
Okay, any questions for Catherine? Okay, thank you. Let's go on to the St. Andrews Bursary Award, the Breckel Memorial Bursary Fund. Mary Bruff, are you here, Mary? I know Mary was there for a bit. Yes, Mary is still here. Anything you'd like to add? So Mary is saying 2 $500 scholarships were offered this year, always looking for more funds. If it's in your heart to do so, it does make a difference in the lives and hearts of people, students. So thank you for that. Any questions for Mary? Okay, let's move on to Leading with Care. Wanda? I thought I saw Wanda here. Oh, she's online now?
As printed.
As printed. Thank you, Wanda.
As printed.
Thank you, Wanda. Any questions for Wanda? Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to the Library Committee. Karen? Anything further, Karen? Everything is good. Any questions for Karen? Wonderful. Let's continue on. Next slide, please. The Welcoming and Membership Team. Anything further from Yolanda or Gary? No, as printed. Any questions for Yolanda or Gary? Let's continue on then. Mission Outreach. Jan, anything further from Jan? No, nothing further. Any questions for Jan? Very good. The Syrian Family Reunification Report as printed, but Jan also has an update. Jan.
If you've read the report for the Syrian reunification, my last notice or sentence in there was that we look forward to the family coming. On the morning of February 14th, we received the notice of arrival from the Presbyterian Church in Canada for the El Hassan family members, Nawahir El Hassan and her son Hassan, and they will arrive in Toronto at Pearson Airport on March the 1st, so this coming Wednesday. The members of the Hassan family will be going to greet them at Pearson and bring them back home. May and I are also going to go to meet the newly arrived family members at the airport that day. They will and then St. Andrews had raised money in the past for this reunification, and so we will be continuing to support them financially for the next 12 months. And the other thing I wanted to mention was that the Hassan family continued to live in the apartment they moved into in 2016. And with their growing family, they would like to move into a house with more space. However, are finding it difficult to secure a new home. So if you have any knowledge of an affordable house for rent in the Kitchener-Waterloo area, please let us know and we will pass that information along to them. And I just wanted to thank everyone who has supported this family financially, personally, and prayerfully. They are grateful for all of your support.
Thank you, Jan. Deeply appreciate that. Exciting time. Congratulations to the congregation for your support of this family and the continued support of this family. And I'm sure it's a thrilling time for them to have the family members come and join them. Wonderful. Any questions for Jan? Okay, wonderful. Let's move on to Yola with the Sela family update, and I believe that Yola has a verbal update as well.
Good afternoon. As most of you know, the sponsorship process for the Sela family who are refugees in Turkey began last summer with Sessions' approval. The family consists of 2 parents and their 2 children, whose grandmother, Farida, has been attending St. Andrews since 2021. And it was the deep concern of Farida, the grandmother, for the family situation and the possibility that they could be deported back to Iran that prompted us to act. Now, the parents are, I should update you, they, of course, have been affected by the earthquake now. Before that, in November and December, we chose, there was a small group within St. Andrews that decided that they needed some help with finances there. They, with rent, with medicines, because the government, the Turkish government, is not really assisting them. And they are, which they did in the first few years that they were refugees. And so things are much more difficult. There was a small group, word of mouth, and we managed to collect some money to send both months in November and December. It was quite miraculous that we were able to do this because a contact was made through the person that was helping me when I was trying to collect documents for the submission of the sponsorship. And this person lives in KW half the year, and half the year lives in the very same city that these refugees live in. And so we were able to use this person to get the collected money for those 2 months to help them. Now, this is not tax deductible, and we knew this, but we felt moved to help these people. The situation has changed now. They survived the earthquake, and I just found out today that they were able to move. We did send them actually a little money this month, or through this person, so they were able to move to a city because the government is asking people to get out of Gaziantep with all the destruction. So they have moved, I don't know the city, it's 11 hours from where they were in Gaziantep, and they will try to live there. Whether they can get jobs, which they did before the earthquake, they were working underground, so to speak, trying to get enough money. So they will hopefully do that again, and I don't know whether we can do this again, giving them money, because now we don't have a contact person in that city. So I will keep you updated, but this is what has happened, and I do ask for your prayers for the health of this family and for the process of the sponsorship to go ahead. We have to wait. The government has not reviewed this sponsorship yet. It has been submitted, but it does take time, and so we do ask for your prayers in this situation. And thank you for your previous help in when we were beginning this process in the summer. Thank you to all of you very much.
Thank you, Yolanda. Any questions for Yolanda? And you can always ask. She's saying that you can ask her later as well. Excellent. Thank you very, very much. Let's continue to the next slide. The music ministry report. Is Anne-Marie here? I don't think Anne-Marie is here. Yes, you are. Anne-Marie, anything that you wanted to add? Any questions for Anne-Marie? Thank you, Anne-Marie. Appreciate that. Sanctuary Choir. Anne-Marie, again, I don't think Gordon is here. Anne-Marie, anything? Any questions for Anne-Marie? Okay, motion from Bev, seconded by Mary Corey, to adopt reports 13 through 21. So moved. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? And that too is carried. Thank you. Next slide, please. Camp K. I don't know if Jackie is, I don't see Jackie. Stephen, anything that needs to be added to the Camp K report? No? Very good. Any questions about Camp K? I think you may, you want to talk a little bit about Rachel? Come on up, Stephen. Don't have to mention it. You'd have to mention it. Yeah,
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify something. Marty, pardon me. The staffing at Camp K has been, well, first of all, I guess the good news about Camp K is that registrations were filled within 24 hours. So the website opened at midnight. By 3 o'clock in the morning, 70% of the spaces were taken. Within the 24 hours is 100% subscribed. So that speaks volumes of what the amazing quality work the Camp K committee is doing, of which I'm not part of. I sit on Camp Committee only as representative from HR Committee, I think. Yes, okay. That's my other hat. So the one bit of news we do have to share is that we do have to find a new director, an interim director going forward this year. Rachel has, for personal reasons, she has told us that after May, she will not be available for this camping season. So we are actively seeking an interim director at this point. If anybody knows of any young or older, doesn't matter, person who might be interested in doing the director's position, please get in touch with Jackie or myself if you have anybody that's the idea. But when you see the advertisements, that's the reason. Nothing serious, all good, but you do have to find somebody just for this season at this point. Have any questions? Hope that clarifies.
Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate that. Any questions at all? No? Let's move on to family ministry. Diana or Judy or Andrew, any comments? Any additional notes? Any questions about family ministry? Okay, that's great then. Motion by Yola and seconded by Jan to adopt reports 22B through 23. So moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? And that too is carried. Wonderful. Thank you. Women's Association, Nancy. Is Nancy here somewhere? No, I don't think Nancy is here. Wanda, do you want to say anything? Wanda?
As printed.
As printed, very good. Any questions for the WA? Thank you very much. WMS, I don't think Deanne is here. Any questions for the WMS? Actually, you may know the WMS has folded here at St. Andrews. We will be having a service of appreciation and dissolution of the WA sometime within the next couple of months. Okay? Did I say WA? My apologies. WMS. Yeah, I'm tired. Yeah. Okay, very good. Thank you. Go ahead, please. Margie. Up to you now. Over to you.
Can I sit here and do this because I have to turn my pages? I don't know I've got enough hands to do it up there. For me, this is the fun part of the meeting. I don't have to take notes and so on. Thanks, moderator. A couple of weeks ago, you might recall that Marty challenged us to be church, to consider the desire of God, to consider his teachings, to praise God with an eager spirit, be good servants, and listen for his call of love and compassion, and be a people who give. Well, that sort of rang with me, and I thought, that's the volunteers at St. Andrews. They carry on with eager spirits, with love, with care, compassion, and they were God's servants, carrying out his work and mission at St. Andrews. They heard God's call and were
people moved who give generously of their time and talents. So we really honor and celebrate their gifts to the church. Stephen last week, I think it was last week, I don't know what day it was, wanted a list of people on committees and so on. So I wrote that list out on my computer going down, and I think it was like about 24 pages. So I decided instead of one column, I should do it maybe 3 columns. Anyway, that list was comprised of members of the WA and their determination to help the church financially through the Christmas market. The Operational Council, the Finance Committee, the Trustees, the Property Committee, the HR Committee, the Family Ministry Team, the Welcoming and Membership Team, the Leading with Care Team, the deacons who make connections with people not only in the KW area but outside of town, the Worship Committee, the Mission Outreach Team, the office volunteers who helped Mel as she adjusted to her new environment, the ushers, the greeters, and the scripture readers, the sanctuary choir, the bell ringers, Reverend Barb, who got the kids involved in service, Make a Joyful Noise singers, and it was wonderful to see those kiddos doing their thing. And a big hip hip hooray to Dave Mitchell and his live streaming crew. Now, I can't really name you all, but you know who they are. Weekly, they make sure our services reach members at home for various reasons, and certainly during COVID, that was so important. Thanks, and the broader public. Some of our live streaming services go across the Atlantic Ocean. You know, people are listening there, so that's pretty amazing. They cover the Douglas Hawes Legacy Concerts, and special thanks to Dave for preparing the PowerPoint for today's meeting. I think Friday we were both kind of pulling our hair out at one point. And thanks to all who update our Facebook page. For me, as clerk of session, I have the best support team. They're here on my left. Terry and Gary, they're not only just support me, they also are my cheerleaders. And the elders who make me feel supported. Thank you all. I think 2022 was an exciting year at St. Andrews. I vowed I wasn't going to mention COVID, but with the COVID era waning, it's such a pleasure to come to church and see more and more people here each Sunday sharing their stories with pleasure and delight. It's always good to see our church family and welcome new members into the fold, and we've had a number of new members just in the last several months as well. So thank you to my church family. My church family. Did you notice I said that? My church family? Our church family. I had lunch this week with the ladies from St. George's in church where I used to worship, and I said, you know, it's so good to see my St. George's family, but you're my St. Andrews family. Our ministers and staff are outstandingly remarkable. You're first rate and you're devoted to St. Andrews. Reverend Marty, where are you? Standing back there. Last year I said you made it your goal to get to understand St. Andrews and our many missions. Well, as the overachiever you are, you achieved this and more. Do you ever sleep? Do the gray sails ever stop firing? I think his brain just goes on and on and on. You have been integral in encouraging us in the notion of encountering God, engaging Jesus, and being an outpost in the kingdom of God. You inspire and motivate us to follow in the footsteps and be church, reminding us to live up to the statue at our Queen Street door. Reverend Wendy, are you here?
She's back there, yeah.
Oh, I can't see her. She's hiding behind a post. How blessed we are to have you part of our church family. You radiate compassion, commitment, and love in all that you do. Your visits and connections via phone, notes, cards to members are so greatly appreciated. With grace and caring, you lead the deacons group. Thank you so very much. And our music ministry is legendary. Anne Marie and Gord, they are carrying the legacy beautifully. with grace. Anne Marie, you so calmly play the organ and the piano with confidence and expertise. Nothing seems to faze you. Members are enjoying the upbeat and more modern preludes and postludes. In fact, I think I've even seen people almost dancing in the aisle sometimes. And kudos for arranging the delightfully interesting Douglas Haas concert. Your passion for St. Andrews is palpable. And Gord, although not here, your talent as director shines brightly when leading the choir and the handbell choir. Thank you both. And we cannot forget our choir scholars. We love having them with us, and it's wonderful to see the growth in their musical abilities. Not to be forgotten is Andrew Height. You know, I really can't see people up here because I have this light in my eye. Oh, he's over there. Okay, Andrew. In your role as family ministry coordinator, you are to be commended for your dedication, your enthusiasm, your creative planning. Andrew oversees the nursery, the kids, the youth ministry, young adults, and family events. And thanks goes to Emma Johnson for her help to restart the young adults group, and Sam Bask, who in his role as youth leader. A round of applause to all of you. Our office staff and our custodial staff, they're the best. Without them, we would not be the hive of activity we are. Mel Seguin, our new office coordinator, with determination and valor, has made the office coordinator role her own. The weekly e-blasts are always something to look forward to. And Hannah continues to keep our books in order. Not a job I would like, but thank you, ladies. And James Sprung and the custodial staff are doing a superb job with the many challenges, especially the January to June period last year. Huge thanks to them. May God bless and keep St. Andrews. Let us be church and carry on together, encountering God, engaging Jesus, and being an outpost in the kingdom of God. Let us embrace this exciting and evolving time at St. Andrews with grace, with love, with joy, knowing we are guided by the Holy Spirit. Let us be church. Amen.
In my weekly newsletter this week, I had said that you know, there's always some trepidation going into an annual meeting. Andrew, I don't know whether many of you know Andrew, but he's the one who said that he was what was it, a fan and connoisseur of annual meetings. Holy smokes! I didn't know there was such a thing. But he's a good friend of both Wendy and myself, and yeah, so he made us laugh. But in my experience, what makes a successful annual meeting is preparation. Absolute wonderful preparation. And I don't know what this woman's middle name is, but we're going to call her Preparation because she does it incredibly, incredibly well. Thank you, Margie, for who you are, for the love that you radiate, and for being such a beautiful clerk of session in so many different ways for this congregation. Thank you.
Is it on? Yeah, thank you all. I'll tell you a little story. My mother told me once that she would never see me as an organized person. I think she was wrong. It's the only thing she was ever wrong in her life.
I'd invite you to please stand. We're going to have a memorial service for those who have passed away, those who are part of the life and ministry. As you are able, please stand. This scripture reading is one that is often used in times of great calamity, great difficulty, but during COVID and even in this last year, losing someone in a time where people could not do the normal things that they did during the death of a loved one, it's hard enough, but during COVID it was even harder. And so I'd like to read this from Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth should change, though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble with its tumult. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of the city, it shall not be moved. God will help it when the morning dawns. The nations are in an uproar, the kingdoms totter. He utters his voice, the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. These people, their families, have had the earth move. There has been uproar and difficulty, and I commend their families to you as we remember them. Dwight Oldham, Marjorie Bruce, Lillian Carlisle, Mike Cassidy, Ken Clark, Ken Cressman, Ruby Cuthbert, Hilda Fletcher, Joan Gross, Diana Patricia Hall, Ted Heimrich, Rita Kimmel, Donald McDonald, Bill McEachern, Violet Mackey, Marianne McKinnon, Clarence McQueen, Andrea Madel, Chris Moore, Wayne Murphy, Howard Mutry, Madeline Nozilik, Janet Panabaker, Jean Posthumus, Jean Rechsteiner, Brian Spruill, Christina Wiley, Blanche Willis, Gwen Wilms, Eleanor Wilson, Elizabeth Van Bodegum, and Thelma Eileen Zlatoff. Gracious God, be with the family of these beautiful people who now surround us on all sides, joining in with that great host of witnesses that have all gone before. Thank you for their witness. Thank you for their love. Thank you for them being church to us and so many. We commend them all and their families to your everlasting care and love. In the name of Jesus the Christ, who was once dead, but now is alive forevermore. And because he lives, we shall live as well. These things we pray. Amen. Tina, go ahead. Did I miss you, Tina? Tina, thank you.
Could we correct the title on the top of the page? In Latin, it's Memori AM, not UM.
Tina, thank you very, very much. We will correct that. So Memori Am, not Memoriam.
Feminine, yes, it's with an A ending AM.
Tina, I don't know what we'd do without you. You keep us on the straight and narrow.
I could add more to it today.
Very good. Motion to adjourn. Okay, moved, seconded. All those in favor? Go now in peace. May the grace, peace, and love of Jesus the Christ, the Spirit, and God the Creator be with you this day and always.